Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Tanks Blitz. And today we're going to be doing another review, another tank review that is, of a new, at this point in the game, Tier 4 medium tank, which is the AMX 40. And finally, they've given this thing the designation it should always have had, which is a medium tank, because there's nothing really like tank about it. It probably won't be common knowledge that I do like the AMX-40. I think it is a good tank despite its flaws. Partly because of just how sloped and stylish it looks, all of these really nice rounded sloping, but also the armor profile that this sloping gives. And today we'll just be taking a look at it. So, the AMX-40 has got 31% protection, 16% firepower, 24% shot effectiveness, and 20% maneuverability. And it will compare favourably, or at least it will be compared to the Matilda, which has got 27% protection, 16% firepower, 46% shot effectiveness, and 16% maneuverability compared to these. So the Matilda has got the same sort of firepower, better shot effectiveness, worse protection, and worse mobility. So looking at the raw stats here, the AMX-40 does look favourably over the Matilda, but that won't necessarily be the case. But starting off here, 550 HP, which is a fair amount of HP for a Tier 4. The Matilda does have 590. Looking at some other mediums here, the AC1 Sentinel has got 520, and the A32 has got 560, so it's perhaps in the slightly lower end, but not by much. The armour, however, is much better. I think the frontal hull is actually thicker in Blitz than it is in PC, being 70 frontal hull, 65 side, 40 rear, 80 frontal turret, 60 sides and rear. So the front, raw, is 70, which is not quite as thick as the Matilda, which has got 75 front, 70 sides, 55 rear, and 75 all around the turret. However, the frontal armour of the AMX-40 is godly, because it's 70 raw, but then look at all of this flatness, sloping. That's basically impenetrable right here. Of course, you do have the driver's viewport here, but even that is rounded and sloped, which gives it a good profile against shots coming in from the front. Obviously, the lower glacis will be more easily penetrated because it doesn't have as much sort of sloping and rounding as the top upper glacis of the tank does have, but the lower glacis doesn't quite have that. But it's still going to be 70 front, so that's good. The sides, of course, 65, which is not quite as much, but that's still really thick for Tier 4, considering the fact that the AC1 Sentinel has 65 frontal hull. So yeah, the front of the Sentinel is the same. Is the same thickness as the sides as the AMX-40, and if you look, the flatness and sloping of the AMX-40 is far greater than those of the AC1 Sentinel. Sorry, the AMX-40. That's why. Let's see if I accidentally said something. Whoops. But even so, look at that sloping, angling. It's all about angling, sloping, rounding on this tank. Just shots coming at you every which way will all bounce because it's really, really nicely sloped. Even the rear has got some sloping going on, even though that will be more easily penetrated. Of course, the frontal turret is 80. The gun mantlet is an auto ricochet, as is most of the turret. It's almost like higher tier Russian medium turrets, this, because of all of the sloping and rounding. Of course, the sides only 60, but even so, that is 60 at a really nice curve. Even at the back, of course, you've got the curves here and here. This bit will be the more easily penetrated part of the rear turret. But then, if all else fails, you do, of course, have this big machine gun at the top, which you can always aim at. And if you have a high-powered sniper rifle of a gun, like the Matilda, you can easily get to it. And, of course, the Matilda, although it does have slightly thicker, more frontal armour, that frontal armour is mostly flat. Here, as you can see, that is an easily penetrated slab if you have got, well, I mean, look, that's almost flat. In fact, it may even be flat, or at least a 5-degree angle. So, yeah, anything with over 75 pen can easily get through the front of the Matilda there, but the AMX 40 is going to be a lot tougher. So yeah, this is the biggest reason that I like the AMX 40, because the sloping is really stylish, but also it is really usable. It's really useful. So yeah, there's the armour, which is really good armour. As you can see, it earns its 31% protection. The manoeuvrability, however, is not that great. 21 tons, 190 horsepower engine, 35 kilometers per hour speed limit. Yeah, it won't get up to that generally. Although, I don't know, I haven't actually taken it out yet, but prior knowledge of the MX-40 in PC, it doesn't get up to the top speed it's listed, but perhaps they've changed it in Blitz, so it might do. The turret reverse is actually not that bad, considering all things considering. It is 27 degrees per second, but the traverse speed is fairly slow, 24.3 degrees per second. Compared to the Matilda, which weighs 26 tons, and it only has 5 more horsepowers. Of course, that is including the black tea. If I was to take that away, the engine power would go down, would it? No, improved fuel is what modifies it, yes. The engine power would go down, yep, to 190, so they have got the same horsepower of engine, except the AMX weighs 5 tons less, which is why it does have the increased manoeuvrability over the Matilda. Although the Matilda does have slightly better traverse, but for worse turrets, the AMX-40 has got better turrets for less traverse, but even so, 24 degrees per second is fairly slow for a traverse. The turret is not that bad, however. Yeah, so there's the manoeuvrability. If we take a look at the turrets here, here's the top turret, which is the Renault Ballande, which has got a 230 meters view range. It goes up to, what is it, 253 with the equipment slot unlocked. So there's always that. Sorry, I'm like dying. And of course the aforementioned really good armour and the not that bad turret traverse. The suspension, of course, can take up to 25 tons. You have got a fair amount of tonnage to play around with there. As for the guns, now technically the best gun is this, according to the firepower, shot effectiveness and manoeuvrability state. And I'm not quite sure why, because, well, I do sort of know why, because it has a better rate of fire than the top 75mm, but this is the 47 SA35, which you'll be used to on, for example, the AMX. And, yeah, well, the rate of fire is increased. It has got worse penetration of 65 with AP, 83 with APCR, 25 with high explosive due to the small caliber. The average damage does go down by 100, which is 60 with AP, 50 with APCR, and 75 with high explosive. It has got a better dispersion, though the dispersion is still pretty terrible, 0.38. The aim time, however, is blisteringly quick, 2.9 seconds, and you can just sort of spit out shots, but really you're going to be frontally facing tanks because you're obviously not the most mobile medium tank going at this tier. At any tier, in fact, you wouldn't be the most manoeuvrable thing. So, generally, you're going to be facing things frontal on, so you're going to want to have the better gun. And let me just switch to a gun rammer here, just so that you can see the 75. So, the top 75mm SA32 is, of course, a 75mm gun, and it is the top tier gun on the tank, even though it is technically the inferior gun according to the stats. But it is the gun that which most people will be using. And what this gun has, it has got a 6.01 second rate of fire, rounds per minute, sorry, yeah, 6.01 rate of fire rounds per minute, which is just under 10 seconds with a gun rammer, just under 10 seconds with a gun rammer. So, yeah, tier 4 75mm do not reload that quickly compared to the higher tiers. The average penetration is only 74, so not quite enough to get through the front of a Matilda. But this is, of course, with a gun rammer. It has got 100 pen with heat, so you can always just use a couple of heat shots and do some damage to the Matilda that way. 38 with high explosive. The average damage is, of course, better, 160 being a 75, 135 with heat, or 200 with HE, so yeah. Nothing too interesting in the average damage. Of course, it is interesting that the AMX gets heat instead of APCR, but it will be a welcome change, because APCR does not like rounded surfaces. such as the AMX 40. The dispersion is far worse than the 47. Sorry, it has got 0.44 dispersion, which is absolutely horrible. That's how it's the levels of dispersion. The aim time, however, is decent enough, 4.8 seconds. Yeah, it's not that bad. Perhaps a little bit on the slow side, but yeah, it's workable. So, yeah, that is, of course, with a gun rammer, and that is all of the stats of the AMX 40. So, it does not have the best gun at tier 4, most certainly. I mean, the AC-1 Sentinel has only got a 40mm gun, but that still has got 78 penetration with AP, which is better than the 74 with the AMX 40. But the armor thickness is the armor thickness and profile is really good. And the gun does have good damage, of course, being a 75mm gun, but yeah, penetration is not quite as good. It does, however, carry 70 rounds of ammunition, so you can carry around a good amount of 75mm ammo and 75mm AP and some heat rounds. You will want some heat rounds, yeah, you will need some heat rounds, because you will see tier 5s in this thing, and well, the KV1 will easily defeat your gun, being 75mm of frontal hull basic. So yeah, that'll easily defeat your gun. The Churchill 1, the Churchill 3, Panzer 4, 5/4, the Wolverine, you'll be able to penetrate, I would imagine. Yeah, 51 frontal hull, 57 frontal turret. Yeah, you can get through that just about. But I mean, even the Chinukai's turret is 75. So yeah, unless you can get its hull, yeah, most things will defeat your gun. So you will want to carry around an amount of heat, probably more premium ammo than you would on any other comparable tier 4 tank, or indeed any other comparable tier tank. As for provisions, you've of course got standard fuel, 3% to engine power and turret reverse. Then you've got canned pate, 3% to crew mastery, and then you've got protective kit, 15% to protection of crew from injuries, 10% speed of module repair, 20% fire protection, and 10% ammo and fuel tank durability. So go ahead, whack on some of them if you want. You're going to want standard fuel, and you're most likely going to want canned pate as well. As for consumables, you've of course got your standard repair, first aid, fire extinguisher. Then you've got engine power boost, 20% engine power for 15 seconds. Then you've got adrenaline, 20% to load speed, and 10% chance of damaging enemy vehicle modules for 15 seconds. And then you've got the multi-purpose restoration pack, which extinguishes fire, repairs all damaged modules, and heals all crew members. Basically, these three things rolled into one. So you can go ahead and mount some of them if you want. I go with the standards just because it's easier, but you can go ahead and mount some of those if you want. If you do, I would suggest the engine power boost to get yourselves into battle quicker. As for equipment, I would actually, quite honestly, go with calibrated shells, purely because it gets you over the 75mm threshold, which is where lots of tanks' armour is at. For example, the Matilda has got 75mm. The Panzer B2, and therefore the B1, has got 60 frontal hull, but it is a bit sloped and things. The KV1, for example, has got 75 frontal hull. There we go, 75 front and side hull. So if you can get him flat on, you can get through his frontal armour that way. Panzer 4, that has got 50 frontal turret, but it has still got 80 frontal hull, so you can almost get through that. The T14 is, I believe, 50, yeah, but of course, taking the sloping into account. The Ram 2 has got 76 frontal hull and frontal turret. Granted, there is sloping there, but if you can get, for example, the machine gun or that, you can get through with standard AP. So it just sort of gets you above a invisible threshold, but it's a threshold that I think of for guns. For example, you want guns which can get to over 150 penetration at tier 6, guns that can get over 75 penetration at tier 4, things like that. And so it just sort of gets you over that threshold. And I mean, the gun rammer would be nice, but the way that equipment is set up, you can only have one or the other, and I would probably suggest calibrated shells just for the better armor piercing. I mean, the heat penetrance is also a nice extra, plus you get 40 heat HE shells, so HE shell pen, so there we go. Then I would suggest coated optics because, well, you're never going to want to sit still. Caminet may be useful, but I mean, at tier 4, tier 5, things can easily bounce off of you. I mean, this is nice rounded armour, so I mean, yeah. Then I would say protected modules. Then your choice, honestly, of enhanced gun lane drive or supercharge. Supercharge would be nice for the decreased shell penetration over distance. So, well, decreased penetration lost over distance. So, I mean, that supercharge is nice, but at the same time, I can understand wanting an enhanced gun lane drive. But 4.8 seconds, honestly, is not too bad. It's maybe not the best aim time, but again, at the same time, it's workable. And then I would say probably enhanced armour, perhaps, just because you have very good armour. So increased thickness plus the sloping will greatly increase that thickness that you get from unlocking spaced armour, or enhanced armour rather. So yeah, I mean, what is it, 70 front, 7 you'd get about 4.5, so let's call it 74 frontal hull. Increase that with the amount of sloping that's going on, that's greatly increased armour once you add on all the sloping of it. So yeah, I would probably say enhanced armour. Then I would say possibly improved control, just because you can get up to, you can get a better traverse speed. The engine power goes up to almost 200. It's 0.5 horsepower away, and you get up to 27.78 traverse speed. So I mean that's better. I mean, you'll have the same turret and traverse, will you? Yeah, you'll have basically the same traverse and traverse speed as your turret. So I mean, I would say improve control with that. Then definitely refined gun, get it down to 0.41 dispersion. I mean, still not great dispersion, but it's better than 0.44. So yeah, I would say refined gun. Then I would say enhanced tracks, to make sure your tracks are at full when they're repaired. Then your choice of whatever the hell those two things are. So overall, it's a very nice medium tank. I do like myself an AMX 40. It is a really good tank, I think. It's got really nice sloping on it. The whole tank as of itself is just really quirky, but I mean, it just has a really nice shape, a really nice feel, and it has really good armor profile for a tier 4 tank. The gun, of course, is not that great, but it's doable. So yeah, that is the AMX 40. I will thank you for watching, and goodbye.